I'm on a journey to get better, and I want to do it with you. And I'm not just focusing on physical health, I'm focusing on everything: emotional wellness, spirituality, finances, relationships, and so much more. Every week, it will be my personal goal to bring us, the world's leading healers, experts, and game changers, to share groundbreaking secrets and tips to getting better in all areas of life. Getting better isn't easy, but it's a whole lot easier when we can do it together. Welcome to Better Together with me, Maria Menounos. Hello, everybody. Happy Hump Day!
Hump day.
Although, is it truly a hump day when we don't technically have to go into work?
Well, if you saw our Patreon episode, Tracy Morgan thinks it's a hump day.
This is true. What a great way to promote our Patreon episode, Stephen. Thank you guys for joining us here on Better Together. When you know better, you get better. That is why we're here. We are on a journey to get better, and we want to do it with you. Our quote of the day: when I get lonely these days, I think, so be lonely. Learn your way around loneliness. Make a map of it. Sit with it for once in your life. Welcome to the human experience. And that is from our guest today, Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote many books, one of which you may know probably first and foremost, called Eat, Pray, Love. Again, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for all of the beautiful comments, the ratings, subscribing, all of that really helps us here on the show. If you haven't become a Patreon member, and we're seeing everyone migrate over there, thank you so much. If you haven't joined us yet, join us. You can just click the link in the summary and join us over there. We're really starting to figure out how we're going to recreate our Patreon episodes, since we're here every day now in kind of crisis mode and trying to figure out how to have a sane place for everyone to be together because we're better together. The show has kind of changed a little bit, although I feel like today will be kind of a return to what every Monday was with Elizabeth, and I'm so excited for our chat. I feel like our Patreon episode will kind of go back to really dealing with health and wellness and all of these things that people still need. You know, as I said on the Patreon episode, people are still being diagnosed with different illnesses, and I still want to kind of dive into some of those and bring people the help that they need. And so I think that's what we're going to do. And then, of course, like more spiritual teachings and stuff, because I feel like, the growth doesn't have to stop because we're in crisis. It actually has an opportunity to advance even quicker, probably. So,
well, I was telling Jeff last night because we were mentioning that all the YouTube titles have like in quarantine and stuff like that, and I was like, Jeff, let's just take that out because I don't think people are searching for quarantine because people want these lessons all the time, quarantine or not.
Good point.
So I don't think the quarantine's necessary. These things apply 24/7, 365 days a year.
I agree.
Totally. And I'm so excited. This is Jeff Graham joining, guys, too. So excited to be here. I'm excited about our Patreon, Maria, because I feel like right now the podcast listeners are getting these amazing guests, but the Patreon is sort of the chance to give them like your buffet of recommendations for videos that are getting you through the week.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of going to be like what's feeding your soul week to week is what we're going to bring to our Patreon listeners. So selfishly, I'm excited. I'll be there as well. And you guys need to join. It's going to be amazing.
I love it. I had a really nice night with Elizabeth last night. So I might be the only human that hadn't read the book. And so I got the audiobook and I got into my office, and I love being in my office. I really made it exactly what I wanted it to be so that I could really want to be there, want to work and all of that. And so I got on my couch. The babies, I had Winnie with me, and slowly Willie migrated and came over and jumped on me. And then I could hear Max's footsteps, and they joined me, but behind the door. He didn't open the door to come in. He just kind of plopped down outside of my door, almost as if he was guarding. It was really cute. And then so I opened the door and let him in. So all three of them are in there. I have my Dunkin' Donuts candle lit, which smells insane. I don't know if you guys know, but Dunkin' Donuts has candles. And it was pretty amazing. And so I just sat and I was listening to her book, and I did the same thing this morning. I went outside and I did my morning meditation. I have this one orange tree that's blossoming like crazy. And even though there were a lot of bees, I stay really calm under there because I know they don't want me. They want the nectar. Otherwise, I would be having a heart attack because I am terrified of bees. Like, throw a tiger at me, I'd be like, oh, booby, but give me a bee, and I'm like, ah.
What if it's a tiger with a stinger?
I don't even know what to say to you sometimes. So anyhow, so I did my morning meditation, which is the agape meditation that I love, awakening your joy. And I'm meditating on all these different colors and a rainbow hugging me and all of this beautiful stuff. And then I just laid down on my yoga mat in my driveway under this tree basically and listened to her book. And it was so calming. And even Kevin, when he came into my office last night, he was finally done with his work, so he said, and was inviting me to come back into the bedroom to watch an episode of a show that we had been watching called Self-Made. Have you guys seen Self-Made yet?
That's the Madam C.J. Walker show?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet, but I hear really good things.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, Octavia Spencer plays Madam C.J. Walker. Tiffany Haddish is in it. Bill Bellamy was in it, and he did great too, by the way.
This is on Netflix, just so everyone knows. So if you have Netflix, you can watch this show.
Blair Underwood. Did we do an after show for it?
We did.
Okay, amazing. AfterBuzz TV's got it going on. And it was amazing because it was the story of the first female millionaire in the United States. And she is a Black woman who created this hair product. It's a very interesting and complicated story, so I'll leave it at that, but it was awesome. Anyway, Kevin was inviting me to go watch the last episode of that so we could have a little bit of time together because he's been working so crazily. And he's like, God, the energy and the vibe in here. He goes, do you see the dogs are all sleeping, all resting? And he's like, this is something really cool is happening here. And I'm like, yes, Elizabeth is talking to us. And I, as I was doing research and watching old videos of her and interviews, I feel like we would have such a great conversation because I kind of had a similar journey in some ways of kind of discovering what's important in life, I guess, and finding, you again and things like that. And so I can't wait to talk to her. It's going to be so fun.
Yeah, I'm a big fan too. I've loved her for a long time. And, she's appeared on podcasts that I like and listen to with spiritual thinkers. And, she's been a long time Oprah disciple as well. So,
oh, for sure.
It's really cool we have her on the show. And I just think in terms of what your audience loves, this is going to be an A+ show.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm also excited to listen to Howard Stern's interview with Tom Brady, although I feel like I got most of the highlights probably online, but pretty crazy stuff. I mean, I don't know why he was talking about his balls. Like, that was insane. I did not expect that.
He's going down the path of Brett Favre.
I mean, and how he knew at the beginning of the season that he wasn't going to stay. And, yeah, I mean, and it was interesting to hear him talk about Giselle. He said she's probably very different than how people would probably see her. What's been portrayed as a fashion model, he said she's really a very spiritual woman. And he says there was a couple years ago, she didn't feel I was doing my part for the family. She felt like I would play football all season and she would take care of the house. And then all of a sudden when the season would end, then I'd be like, great, let me get into all my other business activities and let me get into my football training. And she's sitting there going, well, when are you going to do things for the house? When are you going to take the kids to school and do that? And he goes, what worked for us 10 years ago won't work for us forever. We're growing in different ways. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
it's
I
really
mean,
important.
everyone has their own self-growth path. It's like you imagine that, like, the nuclear family, you have, okay, the kid's at home and then the dad goes to work and then the mom cleans. It's like this 40s mentality. But, like, even in those times, just as the quote of the day said, that get used to boredom and loneliness and like having to deal with yourself. When you're dealing with yourself constantly, which if a stay-at-home mom does, they're constantly figuring things out and changing and developing new skills and developing new traits, and they change over time. So it doesn't make sense to keep the same dynamic for more than a decade, Well,
it's not keeping it dynamic. It's like growing, right? Like even Kevin and I have been having a lot of talks, and I'm growing and growing and growing, and he's trying and trying and trying. And There was something that connected with me so much in Elizabeth's book when she was talking about meeting this medicine man in Bali, and how she asked him how she could live life's delights while still being connected to the divine and being close to God. And he was basically saying you need to be super grounded, as if you have all four, your hands and feet on the ground. And he drew a picture of almost like someone on all fours or something. And then there was no head, it was just foliage. And there was a face on the heart. And he said something to the effect of, start going through your heart and not your head. And that connected with me so much, because when Kevin's getting really riled up about things, I kind of am like pretty calm, because I'm like, either they don't know what they're doing, whoever it is. They're not educated yet on whatever it is, and they're upsetting him or whatever. I'm like, start coming through here, because he's got such a big heart. I'm like, stop coming from here. And it connected with him this morning. And so, as a couple, even when I started going to Tony Robbins seminars, he knew he had to start joining, because if he didn't start growing with me, we wouldn't grow together. And I have to listen to the interview, because pulling quotes out of an interview, you can take them out of context. But is he saying that they're growing in different ways now, or that they're growing in different speeds? Like Kevin and I are growing at different speeds, which is interesting.
It's the whole marriage thing is so fascinating, because you're making a commitment for your whole life. And I'm a newlywed. I'm only coming up on 2 years, but even still, I feel like Laura and I have changed in those 2 years. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was for those men who are panicked about the idea of being married to the same person for 40 years, don't worry. The person you're married to will be much different in 5 years than they are now.
Oh, that's so good. I love that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
that was really good. Yeah.
It's like you get a new partner every 5 years.
Yeah. Every day, really.
So anyhow, and then just a quick thing on this whole coronavirus thing. That thing that we're kind of dealing with. I told you guys yesterday, I've been having this kind of feeling like maybe we flattened the curve in California. And Jeff, you pulled news this morning. Does it seem like we have?
Yeah, things are like going surprisingly well in California. So maybe we're doing our jobs. By rate of growth, yesterday was California's best day since the outbreak was in its infancy. Last week, numbers were decreasing by nearly 25% each day, doubling in 4 days or less, which sounds grim, but is actually good compared to predictions. The new cases Monday represented a 7.6-day growth from the day before, which, believe it or not, is actually great news for us. Gavin Newsom said Monday the state continues to prepare for a scenario in which all of its 50,000 permanent hospital beds are needed. But even on the apex of our cases, which is projected to be April 14th, it's likely that we won't need all of those beds, according to the University of Washington.
Yeah, I even saw that he's starting to ship ventilators and things to other states that really need it. I think we might be okay, guys. Like,
No.
I don't suggest we change any behavior. We got to keep at it, but I don't know. I feel like a glimmer of hope, which is nice.
For the most part, I see masks, I see gloves, I see social distancing. I think people here are really taking it seriously, which, as hard as this time is right now, there's something really beautiful about watching humanity look out for each other, you know?
I agree.
Look out for each other, like, get away from me.
Yeah, I know.
Look out.
Too.
Oh my God. My friends this morning texted me the most hilarious picture. It was a picture of a guy wearing like a hat and like a face gear, but it was of like Hanes boxer shorts, and it had like a big poop mark on it. And he's like, the only mask that will truly keep someone 6 feet away. I
true.
was crying laughing. I sent it to all of my friends at like 7:30 in the morning. And I was like, good morning, guys. And then I kept doing voice texts with them where I was crying laughing, because I think stupid humor like that is really funny. And I am like a little boy sometimes, well, all the time. So anyhow, I wanted to report some good news, because the truth is, a week or so ago, everybody was saying this was going to be our peak week. This week and next week, we were going to really be in the thick of it, and it was going to be brutal. And they were predicting 100 to 200,000 deaths throughout the country. And I kind of feel like we might not get there now.
Hmm.
I know New
I
York
think
is still in rough shape, but not as rough as was being predicted.
As long as people continue to
Yeah,
social distance and
exactly.
stay isolated. Yes.
Exactly. So that is that. A little bit of hope for all of us to be able to kind of move forward through this day. Um, our guest today, as we have been saying, is the New York Times bestselling author of Eat, Pray, Love, Big Magic, and City of Girls. She's widely renowned for her award-winning fiction, nonfiction, and her speaking appearances. She's considered a global thought leader on the subject of creativity, and I am so excited to chat with Elizabeth Gilbert. How are you?
Hello, I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm great. So I was out meditating this morning and then I was listening to you on audiobook, just laying down, and I'm staring at the sky and I'm like, wait, how come like we don't like we should be facing the sky. The answers are kind of like in the sky, but we're walking this way. And I was having this kind of like moment of like kind of, intense thought about our direction in life, obviously
I
gravity.
like
you still using that
that.
CBD cream?
Shut up, Stephen. I was like, wait,
I'll
why?
tell you something, Maria. I had a friend who said to me years ago, I was in a moment of chaos and I had a bunch of house guests and the place was a mess and I was having that horrible feeling of losing control. And she taught me a trick, which was to lay on the floor and look at your ceiling because it's usually the only part of your house that isn't cluttered.
Oh, that's great.
And it's like you look at the ceiling and I mean, unless you have a huge leak or a huge crack, it's kind of like, well, everything's in order there. Just don't cast your eyes down at the sink level. So maybe what you were talking about, sort of the meta version of that, expanding it to just look up at the sky. Everything's fine there.
I know, right? It's so beautiful. It's eternal. It's endless. There's no like I feel like when I moved from Boston to California, when I was home, I always felt like there was like a ceiling, like just crouching and pushing me down. Then when I moved to California, because this is where I could pursue my dreams, it was like,
Uh-huh.
ah,
And part of that was just Boston weather.
that too.
The
That
ceiling was
too.
just a low cloud cover of incoming snow in the end of April. But
Yeah, exactly. And you're in Connecticut right now, right? Or New York?
I know I'm actually in New Jersey. I
Oh,
have
Jersey.
I have this little house that's actually I have an old church that I bought 15 years ago and turned into a little 2-bedroom house, and it's such a magical place. So I'm in a really good spot to be waiting all of this out. I'm one of the people you don't need to be worrying about. It's a lovely spot.
I love that. You know who else has done that? And she was a guest on my show, and I love her. And I have a weird feeling you probably know her, Susie Bettis.
I don't know her.
Oh, you would love her.
Maybe.
She created Poopery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's quite a legacy.
yeah,
Well done.
yeah. And she's amazing.
A
And
gift to
she,
humanity.
yeah, and
Uh-huh.
she bought a church. I think it's in Texas, and she did the same thing.
It's so wait, can I just show
Yes,
you? I just
please.
want you to see the windows because it's tiny. It's weird. It's a tiny little box. It's an old like 1780 chapel.
Wow.
So it's not a lot of space, but it's mostly windows. And it's really just a box of light. Okay. Can you see the
Oh,
size of that window behind me?
wow.
So there's 6 of those. And there's one
Wow.
over there too.
Oh my
So
God, I love that.
yeah, isn't it amazing?
It's so
Um,
peaceful.
I love it so much. It's been such a sanctuary. So many of my friends, I literally use it as a church, meaning as a sanctuary. So anybody who's going through a divorce, anybody who's getting over an addiction, I'm always like, come stay at the church. I'll just send them out here. And so this church is filled with all sorts of people who came here to heal, plus the centuries of prayer that were in here before I got my hands on it. So it's pretty magical space.
That's so cool. I feel like you know, we've so many things that we could talk about, and I was telling everyone earlier how I feel a connection to your journey because I've gone on my version of that journey too, where I think at the end of the day, it's about kind of finding the permission to be yourself, which is still something I feel like I'm working on. And then it's kind of like finding out what you want to do. And it's also it's realizing what's important, right?
Yep. There's a couple things that I think of with that. Um, One is how honored I am that there didn't used to be a name for the phenomenon of a woman pushing a pause button on her life to go in search of inner peace, either traveling or going inward and taking a break to figure that out. And now there's a term for it, like it's your eat, pray, love journey. Like
Yeah.
everyone knows there's like a shorthand for it. Everyone knows what it means. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people come up to me and say, like, I'm in the middle of my eat, pray, love journey right now, or my daughter's on her eat, pray, love journey. I'm so honored that my contribution to the English lexicon is a word for when a woman stops everything and goes and takes care of herself and
Yeah.
goes on a journey. It's such an important and beautiful thing to do. And I also often describe myself as a walking permission slip. If I could do nothing but walk around the world telling people, especially telling women, that they have my permission, if they need anybody's permission, they have my permission to be who they are, figure out what works for them, walk away from any culture or family pressures that are oppressing them, maybe anything. Like I just feel like I just want to hand out permission slips
Yeah.
all over the place, and that's basically what I do.
Which is beautiful and we need it. I wonder, and this is a weird comparison, but I had a guest on the show who did a sketch comedy series. Her name is Eliza Schlessinger, and she had this
Oh, she's
amazing.
great.
Isn't she amazing?
Yeah, so great,
Okay,
so great.
so did you see her most recent sketch comedy series on Netflix where she talked? She had a sketch called Ladies,
No, I didn't see it.
and it
Or
was
remind me, maybe I
it's
did.
like it's like almost like her version of The View, and all of these girls
Uh-huh.
are all self-congratulatory, and it's like me, 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 for me, what I need, and me, and me, and me, and it makes me wonder, how someone can take your message, and it's a thing that I have struggled with as well, and apply it correctly. And is that me trying to control too much? Because when I remember after I was diagnosed with my brain tumor, my mom had just been diagnosed months before, and it was like, what the heck? And I was asked how I was feeling by someone, and I said, I'm just dying to be me.
Mm,
And I was really exhausted of living a life that I had built that I didn't want anymore.
right.
And expectations, and just a rat race of madness, right? And so sometimes when I see those sketches and I'm like, oh gosh, am I that person too?
Right. Well, I guess the fact that it makes you not want to be that person is a little bit of the answer. Like you have enough humility that that's the last thing in the world that you would want to be, right? And certainly my own experience with going deeper and deeper into a spiritual journey is that the deeper you get into that stillness and into the mystery of that, the more humility it gives you. And so you become sort of the opposite of the person who's like, me, me. And you're more like, how can I serve? And how can I be of use? And what is my actual service? Not my martyrdom, not my desperation to please, not my desperation to acquire, but is there some place in here where I can be of use? And that becomes the question. Somebody said, like, first you go looking for God, and then God has work for you to do. And so I completely get and would also laugh at and would have the same reaction as you. I'm sure if I was watching that, I would be like, oh God, please don't let that be me. But that would then literally be my prayer. Like, please don't let that be me.
Yeah.
Please keep me in humility. And I think part of humility too is being in, it doesn't feel like, maybe it doesn't sound like our traditional definition of humility, but part of it is being honest about what you are not, and that is a really big one for me. I always talk about the power of the two words, not this. A lot of times people are in situations that are not working for them. They're in relationships that are not working. They're in job situations that are not working. They've pleased themselves to the brink. They've achieved or acquired themselves to the brink, and they stay in it because they don't have a vision yet for the alternative. And it's so frightening to think of walking away from something and not walking into something, right? You want to make sure you have your next steps figured out, or at least that's what most of us want, because we want to be able to control everything. And I always say that you don't actually need to know what comes next. Sometimes you just need to say, this two words that I think begin every journey, which is not this. I don't know what I am, but I know that I'm not this. I'm not the person who needs to be in this abusive relationship. I'm not the person who needs to be worked to death. I don't know. And people will often challenge you on that when you start saying that. And they'll be like, okay, so what do you want to do? And the humility comes from saying, I don't know. But I have to start by at least saying, not this.
I was thinking yesterday about all of the women who read your book and connected so much that they were like, I'm divorcing, I'm done, I feel this connection. And then they went off on their journeys. And for the people maybe who are going to get to your book now, maybe that hadn't gotten to it, is it as easy as just saying, not this, and just go where your kind of heart's content is and follow your bliss? Or is there realities you should be taking into account? Like where is that line for you when you're, giving advice to a friend who's like, I just want to like quit and just move and just go travel and live, and you're like, okay, but like someone's gonna have to pay your rent because you're in a a
Right.
lease for a year, and like there's things that are gonna have to be done. Like how do
Right.
you handle that?
Well, I don't have to, because life will teach them
Yeah.
that. Their good friend life will humble them just the way my good friend life has humbled me. And I'm sure your good friend life has humbled you. Like when you're out of reach, you'll be notified. You'll be notified because it won't work. And then you're sort of back at square one. But I do think my experience has been to be on the receiving end of hearing a lot of these stories for women. I wish women were a little lighter hearted about it. Generally, my experience is the opposite, which is that a woman has to almost die before she will change her life.
100%.
Um, and Glennon Doyle told me that as well, about when she was in her first marriage with Craig, and she had so many autoimmune diseases, which often happens to women when they're dying and pleasing everybody else. And she was bedridden for almost a year. And she said to him, when we're old, can we move? They were living in the north. She said, when we're old, can we move to Florida so that I don't have to be cold and freezing all the time? And he said to her, why do we have to wait until we're old? Why don't we do that now? And it was what the first story she ever told me when we became friends, when we met. And she casually tossed off this line and said, why does a woman have to almost die before she's willing to consider making a change? And I made her stop and say it again, because that's what I witness. I don't witness people blithely just tossing off their lives and their obligations. I witness people staying until the alternative has become literally unsurvivable.
Yeah.
And I wish they would stop a little sooner.
I agree.
Just a
I
little
see that
sooner.
as well. I feel like that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I love doing this every week and now every day, is because I want to reach that person that is neglecting themselves and doesn't have the gift that I had of a brain tumor to make changes because I was brought to my knees.
Yeah.
But there, I guess the question was more for like the millennial base. That is, it's more of them, because it's like our generation is a little different. And, the over, let's say 40 is more of, what you're
Thank you for
saying.
calling me part of that generation. I appreciate that as a 50-year-old. Yeah, I'm part of that generation, the people in their 40s.
40 and up, we
I
are
don't
the ones that
think
are doing that for sure.
I don't think honestly, Maria, I don't think any generation will be spared suffering and hardship. I don't
Hmm.
think any human will be spared suffering and hardship, no matter how helicopter parented you were, no matter how entitled you may think you are. It's the first noble truth of Buddhism, and I've never seen it contradicted by any evidence of life, that life is suffering, and it's coming. I had a young woman actually in the audience, a very sweet young millennial, recently raised her hand, and she said, you keep talking about everything that you've learned through the suffering in your life, and I feel like I haven't had any, and I want to learn and I want to grow. And I was like, don't worry, it's coming. And everybody started laughing so hard. And I said, I don't mean that to sound like the voice of doom. I mean that to say, suffering knows where you live. It knows where we all live. It knows your home address. When it's your turn, there'll be a knock on the door and you'll get just what you need. And until then, just be grateful. Just
Yeah.
be grateful that it's going well, and don't worry, whatever dose of suffering is your allotment in life, it's coming. And then comes the really big question, which is, can you turn that into grace? Can you turn that into transformation? Can you make catharsis out of it? And that's the human side of what can we do with our suffering to make it not just be useless, wasted pain. And that's, I think, the most interesting possible way to live. But I would never, I'm not a parent, but if I would do what all parents do, I would try to shield my child from that as much as possible. And life would do what life does, which is introduce it when it's necessary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't worry too much about that. It's what's coming to people is coming to people. I know that because of my own life, and you know that because of yours. And that's the ultimate humility, to just have to surrender into that reality.
Do you look at all pain and suffering as an opportunity for spiritual growth?
It can be, but it needs your participation. And the example that I always think about this is back when I was a journalist and I was writing for GQ magazine, I did a profile of a guy named Jim McLaren. I've been thinking about him a lot lately. Jim was this extraordinarily gifted, handsome, talented young man. He was an athlete and an actor. He went to Yale Drama School. He had the world on a string. He was gorgeous. He was brilliant. He was beloved. And he was riding his motorcycle in New York City one day at the age of 20, and he was hit by a bus and he lost his leg. And he recovered and then became this formidable, powerful teacher, about overcoming obstacles. And he became a motivational speaker, and he became an athlete again, and he became the world's foremost amputee triathlete. And he just was a picture of resilience and survival. And we can get through anything. 10 years later, he was in a triathlon, and he was leading the pack on the bicycle, and he was hit by a car, and he became a quadriplegic. And it's just the most
Oh my
appalling,
God.
yeah, the most appalling story, because as he said, I thought I was done. I thought my big karmic thing had happened. And that's another piece of the humility that you have to carry, of like, as long as you're alive, your story isn't finished yet in any
Yeah.
direction. And he tanked after that. He was not able for a long time to restore his spirit. He became an addict. He was so full of despair and rage, and pulled his life back together, but with a lot. It was a lot harder the second time, and became a teacher, became a student of spirituality. One of the most grace-filled, just light-filled people that I've ever met. And I asked him exactly that same question, right? I said, "Is pain a conduit for transformation and for learning and for growth?" And he said, "Only if you do the work. Otherwise," he said, "catharsis doesn't happen automatically, just because something painful happened to you." He said, "Transformation only occurs with your effort." And he said to me, "Don't ever waste your pain, Liz. It's one of
Oh,
the greatest tools. It's one of the greatest tools to transform your life, but only if you use it as that. Otherwise, it's just wasted suffering. Don't ever fall into wasted suffering." And I don't think there's a more eloquent answer than that, or a more legitimate person to hear it from than the guy who lost his leg and then became quadriplegic. Like, that's somebody who knows his way around pain, suffering, and transformation.
absolutely. I mean, I think it's an invitation to level up every time.
Yeah.
And don't you feel like, these patterns that just keep coming are coming for us because we haven't still learned the lesson, whatever that lesson is, to kind of get to the next level? I look at it like a video game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a wonderful way to see it. And actually, Martha Beck, my friend, goes even farther and says, "You designed it before you were born. Your soul designed the video game to say, I want to give myself everything I need in this lifetime. Okay, I'm going to need a brain tumor. Okay, I'm going to need the love of my life to die. I'm going to need an addiction to wake me up." And that's a really radical way to think of it. I don't think any of us know what this is, what this experience of human life is and consciousness is. I only know that in my case, when I think of it, I like to think of it as Earth School. And I actually was recently thinking about getting a tattoo that says Earth School Class of 1969, because that's when
Hmm.
I came into Earth School. And that it's a generous school, but it's a hard one.
Hmm.
And you come here because you want to grow, and you want to learn, and you want to transcend, and you want to shed all those attachments and bitterness and resentment and blame and rage and limitation and all of that. And life cooperates with that desire by giving you lots and lots and lots of opportunities to
Yeah.
suffer until you either surrender or overcome, whichever the lesson might be in that case. I can't prove that it's Earth School, but when I think of it as Earth School, it makes it easier for me to walk through challenges. I'm like, oh, Earth School. All right, this is sophomore year of Earth School now. Like
Yeah.
we got through, and as soon as you get through one, they're like, okay, you did well on that. Here's another one.
Yeah, I wonder, how do you handle the incoming missiles, let's say? So for
Mm,
me, I've stayed in a practice for the last few years, and sometimes I'll get knocked off my feet a little bit and get really upset, like with my mom when we're bumping our heads with her and she's,
mm,
cognitively not doing well, and it's so frustrating to see somebody be a shell of who they were. And that was another part of the book that I really just loved, is the or one of the videos I was watching on you was you being honest about caretaking and how
yeah.
ugly caretaking can be. And I try to share that with people as well, because it's a really brutal experience. And so I went outside the other day and I had my book, my Gabby Bernstein notebook,
Yeah.
where I write my Esther Hicks notes and my Wayne Dyer notes and my Gabby notes and everything that,
You're my people, Maria. You're my people.
right? So this is what I
Yeah.
do when I'm
Yeah.
suffering and I need to get myself back on track. And that's when I remembered, okay, pain pain can create spiritual growth. It can be that moment. So I'm like, okay, what am I trying? What am I supposed to be learning here with her?
Mm,
And then listening to you talk about the medicine man, and when he illustrated that, that,
mhm.
I don't know, it was almost like a human dog with the foliage coming out and the heart face and coming from the heart. It stuck with me, and then I forgot what it was, and then all night I was trying to get back to that, and then this morning I was trying to get back to that, and remembering that lesson. And I think, it's become something that's easier for me to have empathy and a lack of judgment for so many people when I'm interacting with them, because it's such a calmer place to live in,
Mhm.
to just be in that space. And I felt that you are in that space, but then I'm having a hard time with my mom now.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay,
You're in
reminder to
such a
come from the
hard one.
heart.
That's such a crucible. Caretaking is such a crucible, and it's such a furnace. It will burn you to ash. It's one of those things that it'll break you, and it will exhaust you. And I don't have kids, but I imagine it's that child rearing is the same.
Hmm.
A friend of mine who's a psychiatrist says people have children in order to disavow themselves of the mistaken idea that they are good people. Because your children will like push your buttons to the point where you just can't be a good person, and you're like, I can't believe I just exploded like that. I think it's a combination. I think you said mercy and tolerance, toward other people. But in those cases, when I'm broken and I'm shattered and I'm shredded, I know that that's a signal that the person I need to be extending mercy and tolerance to is myself right there. Because
Mm.
I can't be certain how everybody else is suffering. But if I'm on the brink, I know that I am, so then that's when, as a steward of my own spirit and my own soul, that's when I try to reach out to myself and be like, okay, baby, how can I help you? How can I help you? What do you need? How can we serve Liz today? Like, how are we going to get through this? And I've also just learned a lot of times when I get brinksy, that's the word I use for feeling like I'm on the brink. It's almost, I'm going to say if I can say always, but always is such a strong word. Let me at least say almost always. It's almost always because I'm trying to control something that is beyond my control.
Mm.
And that's an invitation for me to step back and be like, what business are you in right now that is beyond your ability to control? And that's making you crazy. It's making you crazy, and it's making you angry. And is there something here that you can let go of, even though all of your training tells you that you have to fix it, and all of your training tells you that you have to solve it and do better? Can you quit? And I don't know what that necessarily means in terms, like with Rhea. When my partner Rhea was dying, I really went into her death absolutely certain that I was going to be the world's best caregiver, and that I was going to create the most beautiful, gentle, loving, evolved space in which for her to pass gently. I mean, I laugh about it now because it was actually what it was living hell. And it was the most humbling thing that I've ever gone through in my entire life. But
And
that
this was
humility
post your
was,
spiritual growth.
oh yeah, dude, you want to see my spiritual growth? You should have seen me during that. Like, it was like, I was a wreck. I was an absolute wreck. And one of the things that I had to surrender to, that turned out to be so beautiful, was that I wasn't actually a very good caretaker for her, and that there were other people who were better at it. Her ex-girlfriend showed up, and stepped in and took over, and I was like, oh. And I remember being so angry because Rhea kept saying, Stacy's such an angel.
I
Stacy's such an
know.
angel. She's so patient. She's such an angel. And I would get enraged, and I'd be like, I'm the fucking angel. I'm the angel. I've given up my whole life to, I would just go on this
Yep.
rant. And then one day I went for a long walk, and I was like, and I was really angry because I had this belief, Rhea should not be calling Stacy an angel. She should not be calling her, I'm the one who should be an angel. And then I thought, is that true, that she shouldn't be calling her an angel? And then I thought, what is the definition of an angel? Okay, the definition of an angel is somebody who comes in and lifts your troubles for you. And right now, Stacy's here lifting my troubles for me by taking care of Rhea
Yeah.
better than I could. Oh, she's an angel, but she's my angel.
Wow.
And the only thing I have to do to let that angel in is let go of needing to be the angel. And if I can let go of that, then suddenly an angel has arrived. And I just dropped it. And then Rhea's ex-wife showed up, and all of a sudden there were all these women from her past who, like, because everyone loved her and they all wanted to help.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, I was like white knuckle controlling it. I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to be the goddess. I wanted to be the one everybody said, God, Liz was so great the way she took care of Rhea. It broke me, and it broke me till I had to be humble enough to let other people in and let them. And then by the end, I just very blatantly said to Stacy, I'm in service to you. What can I do to make your life easier? You're the point person here. You're doing this better than I can. If
Wow.
there's anything I can do to help, then you tell me. And the relationship that I now have with both of those women is one of actual sisterhood, because of the humility to be able to say, it's your, take it, I can't. And for me, the words I can't don't come very easily.
Yep. Yep.
But life definitely does her very best to teach me when to say that. And the clue now is, if I'm at the edge of stress and breakdown,
Brinksing.
I'm brinksing, and I'm trying to do something that I'm not good at. And
I
it's
like
time
that.
for me to quit. It's time for me to surrender.
Well, there's just another permission slip for people to realize, because I say that to my dad all the time, we're doing our best and we're trying so hard. And, it's a very thankless job, and you always feel underappreciated and such. And so it's also harder when you have a cognitive situation too. So you're just like, this
Oh,
really is difficult, because you're like, does she
it's
know? Does she
nightmare.
not know? What part of this is she understanding? Um,
And
and
it's not like, I'm sure it's not like she wakes up every morning and thinks, how can I make life easy for the people who are taking care of me?
no, 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 not at all. Not at all. But
Yeah.
I think, and this is what I've said to him, I'm like, Dad, we're not caretakers like that. We have our roles that we play. Like, I am the medical, I'm the intuitive, I know what she needs. I have taken her care to, this place where, she's coming up on 4 years with stage 4 brain cancer. It's a
Mm.
very rare situation. But I'm like, I know where my strengths are. I can't have the level of patience it requires to get her down the stairs, right? Like, it's just a very, very different skill set. And so I
I think
like you
that's
giving.
extraordinary. It reminds me, when I was in college, I worked for years for a family. And they hired me to help their daughter with her homework. And so I'd come over every afternoon and sit with her and help her with her homework. And her mom was a lawyer, and she's very successful. And I used to think, like, I wonder why I'm doing this, and why, and one day her mom, because I still had some idea that moms are supposed to do that. And one day she just said, I realized a long time ago, I'm actually not really good with a lot of the stuff about being a mother. A lot of the stuff that involves really deep patience and stillness. But I'm a really good provider. So it's really better for me to go out in the world and work and provide for my family, and then hire people like you who are really patient and gentle with my kids to take care of them. And I was like, that's amazing insight
Hmm.
to know that about yourself, and also way to stick a needle in the balloon of guilt of as a mother you're supposed to be a certain kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And her kids are amazing. They turned out to be just wonderful people, because she's like, I'm not gentle nourisher, I'm not patient, sit there all day and do your spelling test with you, but I know who is, and I'm going to bring them in. So yeah, I think if you can let yourself off the hook a little bit like that, it's good. It's
Yeah.
good.
Elizabeth,
Know
how
who you
did you
are, but also
deal
know who you're not.
totally. How did you
Yeah.
deal with disagreements and how to care for Rhea with everyone involved?
Sometimes really, really messily,
Mm.
sometimes with tears, sometimes with rage. It wasn't, not everybody who was involved with Rhea's life, from family to friends, was in agreement. Um, it's, uh, I don't know if there's a way to walk through that with absolute superhuman grace, unless you are literally an enlightened master. And I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. And feelings were hurt, and people, relationships were altered and have never totally recovered. I've done my best with it, but it's messy.
Mhm.
It's messy and it's painful. I guess mostly what I've tried to do is like be humble and honest about what is my part in this. What is my part in this disagreement? And usually my part is I'm trying to control everything, and I think I'm right.
Yeah.
And I think I'm right, and generally the other person also thinks that they are right. So that's, now you're at war,
Mhm.
and those wars can be really, really bitter, when somebody else's life is involved. Um, or some of us would think Rhea wasn't making the right decisions for her own self. Messy, ugly, hard, challenging, humiliating, humbling, and difficult. And I don't know that it's not supposed to be all of that.
Mhm.
I know that it sanded me down so much and took away so many of my illusions of my own goodness and my own kindness and my own ability to handle things. And whatever else it did, I don't know if that was the point, but I'm a much, much, much more humble person on the other side of having gone through that. I'm also much less likely to jump into a situation and say, I know how this should go. Because I actually have to admit that I don't often know how it should go.
Mm. Very true. We have a question in the chat actually, um, and it's switching gears to kind of that spiritual journey and that travel you did with Eat, Pray, Love. So Michael wants to know: does Elizabeth think she could have taken her journey virtually? Of course, right now with everyone in quarantine,
Right,
is there a
right.
way you think that you can take this journey?
Well, if I were doing it now, I'd have to, wouldn't I? Right? I mean, I think a lot of us are being forced into isolation, retreat, and solitude right now, and that is interesting. That is an interesting thing. The part of my journey for Eat, Pray, Love that was the most important by far was the piece in India, the 4 months that I spent at the ashram. And in that situation, I didn't go anywhere. Um, I didn't leave. I was in that meditation cave 6 to 8 hours a day. Um, I would sleep all night, wake up at 4:30 in the morning, go to the morning chants, do my service, go into the meditation cave, do some chores, go to the meditation, scrub the temple floor, go to the meditation. It was just hours and hours and hours of silence where I had to endure my own company. And I can't tell you how many people after reading It, Pray, Love said, I kept saying, I wish I could do something like that someday, but I can't afford it. I wouldn't be able to go for that long. I've got a job. What's really interesting about this particular moment is suddenly it's like, okay, here you are. Here you are. And what I do see is people doing absolutely anything to avoid having to be in their own company and in their own solitude. And there's a level at which I completely understand that. This is like the constant Zoom parties and the meetings and the activities and the kind of frantic sense of like, how can we bring the world into our home so that I don't have to be lonely? I totally get that. Humans are social animals, and we need that connection in order to be healthy. But we're not only social animals, we're also spiritual animals. And there's not a single spiritual tradition in the world that does not advocate for silence, stillness, isolation, and facing those feelings of loneliness, anger, resentment, frustration, boredom. What it felt like for me to be in that meditation cave for those first 3 months in India is what I'm seeing people feel like in this first 3 weeks of isolation that's happening here in the States. I was crawling out of my skin. I was suffering because I could not bear my own company. And the most important thing that I ever did was to just keep going back and back and back into that meditation cave every day until there was finally the beginnings of a peace, a truce between me and all the voices in my head, all the shame, all the anger, all the boredom, all the disappointment. And that's the most important thing I've ever done in my entire life. It's the basis for anything good in my life now. So I don't want to assign people to sitting in stillness with their uncomfortable feelings. I just want to say there's really amazing gold to be found on the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's too horrible, like, keep busy.
Yeah.
But like everything, this is an invitation, and invitations, you can take them or you cannot take them. But yeah, I think I would definitely not have been able to have the adventure that I had, but I'm having a different one now. I've spent the last 3 weeks. I'm not seeing. I saw a friend yesterday for the first time. So for the first time in 21 days, I saw another person. But I've been completely alone here, and it's been beautiful. But that's because I've done a lot of practice on being alone.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what of all of your tools do you think you could share with people that could help them in this time?
Well, I actually would share with you one of Martha Beck's tools. Martha Beck is a wonderful life coach and a dear friend of mine. And I've been hearing her in the last few weeks teaching this one a lot. And it's really simple and it's really concrete. Um, so what you do is you just, and I think it's easy for people to understand this because everybody knows that we have multiple voices in our heads and that those voices are often at war. It's not, I'm sure you all get it, and I'm not the only person who wakes up and the war begins as soon as you wake up. Like, so for me, I wake up and instantly a voice is like, you better exercise today. And another one's like, I don't have to. And the war begins. It's like the first conscious, whatever it is, it's like they're already, I'm like, who are you, fighting inside my head?
So true.
So people right now are experiencing a lot of the really, really difficult human emotions: fear, boredom, anxiety. Remember too that boredom is often a cover for anxiety, right? What we call boredom is usually just anxiety hiding
Mm.
behind ennui, right? But what you actually are when you're feeling bored is anxious. So fear, boredom, anxiety, anger, blame, loneliness, despair, these are really big ones. So if you take one of them and sort of personify them, and you ask, for instance, your fear, let's go with that one because a lot of people are in a lot of fear right now. You get a notebook out and you say to your fear, I want to let you speak and I want to listen to you respectfully and nonviolently, and just tell me what it is that you're feeling and let it speak and be respectful and be nonviolent in your listening. Don't interrupt. Don't try to shame it. Just let it out. So give it a few minutes to say everything that it's afraid of, and then say, thank you so much. I have the greatest respect for you. I really appreciate your honesty with me, just like you would do in any difficult conversation when you're trying to help people through conflict, but you're doing it in here.
Mm.
And then you say, I wonder if you could step aside for a minute, fear, now that you've been heard. And I'd like to call wisdom to the front. And wisdom, would you please come? And would you please tell us what we need to know right now? And then you allow wisdom to write whatever wisdom would tell you. And it is the most extraordinary exercise, Maria, because we all have these deep reservoirs of wisdom that are buried underneath our fear and our anxiety and our rage and our blame and our shame. And when Martha talks about this, and she talks about the people she's taught this to, and how instantly it's like this physiological shift where they go from panicked and stressed and terrified and young and little and horrified, and then they go into this wisdom space, and out of them just pours, you would think the Buddha was writing to them, but it's coming from within. It's coming from, we've all absorbed a lot of wisdom over the years, whether we want to admit it or not. It's out there and it filters in and it lands in you. And so then your wisdom will give you really, really good advice and say, okay, this is what we're facing right now. And things are probably not going to change anytime soon. And I recognize you, whatever it says. I can't tell you what your wisdom would say. But that exercise also works with anger. And it also works with sadness. It also works with boredom and anxiety. You ask them to speak, you give them a voice. And then once they've been respectfully listened to, you ask them to step aside and you invite wisdom into the room and see what it has to say.
Wow. I'm going to do that. I
It's
love
really
that.
good and it's really simple.
I love that.
It's really simple and you'll be so moved by what wisdom says. I mean, some of you, if any of you out there follow me, you know that I've talked about this a lot. I've had a tradition for the last 20 years of writing myself letters every day from love. And it's a dialogue generally between my fear and love. It's really similar to what Martha's talking about here, but I call it love because what I'm always craving is unconditional love. That's the big hole inside of me that I'm always trying to fill. And I'm just so moved by the way love shows up when I ask her in, and my fear goes on a rampage and my anxiety goes on a rampage, and then love shows up and she's so kind and she's so generous and she just says, she never gives advice. Love never gives advice.
Yeah.
I always say, what should I do? And love says, I don't know, but whatever you do, I love you. And whatever you do, I'll be with you through it, the way that we've been through everything. And I can't tell you how this is going to turn out. And I see that you're really anxious, but I'm with you and I've got you. I was with you at the beginning of your life. I'll be with you at the end. I've been with you through everything. You can't lose my love. You don't have to earn it. I don't need you to be a thought leader. I don't need you to be transformative. I don't need you to grow or anything. I don't need anything from you. I just love you and I'm with you. So that's another one that you can invite in, is you can ask unconditional love to come and speak to you as well. It works best on the page, I find, in writing, because you can slow your mind down into sentences that actually will still your mind.
I like that. I also was moved when you were talking about in City of Girls, the love letter to New York, and how you felt like you could be yourself there. And I kept thinking to myself that I wanted to ask you if you feel like you 100% can be yourself now, or do you feel like it's still a journey?
Well, New York has definitely been, my name for New York personally is the Great Mother. And maybe you feel that way about California in terms of the place. Oftentimes there's like, if you're not from a place and then you find your place and you feel like it's just welcoming you unconditionally and saying, we want to, we want to help you succeed and we want to give you all you need. New York doesn't have a reputation for being gentle, but I've always experienced it to be that because it's a place where I got to finally go and be who I really was. I am not always truly in my integrity. I'm not always truly authentic. The closer the relationship, the more likely I am to fall out of my integrity. Because there's intimacies that are deep and old and twisted and, vines that have grown up around each other. Family is the final frontier always. Glennon talks about this too, where she says, people will always say right around Thanksgiving or Christmas that, I felt like I really had myself together and stable and serene. And then I go home and why can't I be myself with my own family? And she's like, that's the
Mm,
last place you're going to be able to be yourself. That's the
yeah.
place, like, that's the final frontier. Ram Dass, who recently died, said, if you think you're enlightened, go home and spend Thanksgiving with your family, try it out. That's usually where you can find it out. So definitely I feel like when I'm with my most intimate relatives, I still slip into old coping mechanisms and old behaviors of pleasing, of sacrificing my truth for the good of other. It's very difficult to do in those settings, but I'm getting better at it, and I'm really gentle on myself about it now. I don't expect that I should be able to deliver Buddha um, Christmas dinner. It's like, and then I'll just go in a room by myself and I'll write to love and say, I feel like I didn't really hold it together today. And love will be like, that's okay, baby. I love you anyway. I've
What a
gotten a lot more.
great practice. And you really do that every day.
I do it every single, I'm looking at like rows of journals on the shelf across from me that are
Wow.
just pages and pages of it. And I mean, if there is a secret to happiness, I think it's friendliness toward yourself. And I think, even more than love, maybe just the word friendliness, just a sense of friendliness, like, oh, kid, like, I don't want anything bad to happen to you. I'll look out for you.
Oh,
It's such a sweetness that I feel toward myself these days, and a sense of really having her back, like having Liz's back. And I don't always, but I always know that if I fail myself, I'll find out very quickly because I'll be in pain. So anytime I'm not in my integrity, I very quickly start to suffer.
mm-hmm.
And then when I suffer, that's a clue that I'm out of my integrity. And then that's a clue that the first thing to do is show mercy to myself for my humanness. And then we'll try it again tomorrow.
I love that. It reminds me of like the Dickens process where you have to kind of go back and hug that 6-year-old self of yours and say, you wouldn't
Totally.
beat up your 6-year-old self. You would say, "Oh my God, you
Oh,
little cute little chubby cheek little thing. Like, it'll be fine."
baby. Oh, baby, you still think this person needs to love you? Oh, poor thing. Come
Yeah.
here, I'll love you, like, and sometimes I think the way I try to teach it too, because people oftentimes have so much shame and hatred that they actually really could beat up their own inner child, but they seem to be kinder to animals. So sometimes say, imagine that you went to an animal shelter and you adopted a dog or a cat who had been really traumatized, and you took it home and you wanted it to be able to learn to trust you, and you wanted to teach it that you were safe, and you wanted to, like, you would never yell at it, you would never kick it, you would never be like, God, why are you such a loser? Like, you just,
Yeah.
you would never, you would make it the softest home. You would give it everything that it needed. You would be so tender with it. And that's true stewardship of yourself, is treating yourself like you're that shaking animal that you just adopted from the pond.
I love
From the
that.
pound, not from the pond. Uh-huh.
I love that. I love that. And it's such an important message for everybody to hear right now, too. And I know we are out of time. You have a very busy life. And I feel like we didn't get to any of the creativity talk that I wanted to talk about because our conversation just flowed into another place, which was
It went
beautiful.
just where it was supposed to go.
Yeah. So hopefully you'll give us some time in the future. We can talk about
I would love that,
creativity
Maria. I would
um,
love that. I would love that. Take
and
care of you.
thank you. I always ask one last question of all of our guests, and it's
Sure.
what are you doing every day to get better?
Writing myself letters from love every single day. Every single day.
I'm going to add that to my routine. I take a good nugget or two from every show and I apply it, and it's been amazing for me. So I am so grateful for your time and for your beautiful messages and the tools and everything that you shared today. It's going to help all of us get better. So thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Nice to meet you. Have a great
Bye.
day.
Thank-
Wow. I mean, I have like a zillion more things that I wanted to get to, but you only have so much time in life, and I look forward to our next conversation. She was amazing.
You guys were really connecting too, Maria. I think she's really earnest and sincere when she says she'll come back, and I can't wait for that show.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, it was really great.
I just think that she has such an honest way to approach things. It's always nice to talk to somebody who is revered in this thought leader way and hear that they flounder sometimes too, because
Mhm.
Gabby Bernstein, when she's on the show, she says the same thing, like, if I'm not in practice, I'm gonna flounder. And so it's a great way for us to have mercy on ourselves as well, when we flounder, and know that it's a continued journey and a continued process to get better.
Yeah, I find her to be just so generous too. Like, I feel like she really does want to reveal who she is to us at her
Mm-hmm.
best and at her worst. And just like you said, Maria, for this, revered speaker who has 8 acclaimed books, to and hearing her speak about Rhea too, I was like, man, you are just so human. Thank you for letting us see how human you are, because I feel so at ease about my own stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great.
Exactly. Um, Anyhow, that is our day. Thank you guys for
We
joining
should
as
let the
always.
audience know real quick. In paperback tomorrow, Liz's new book, City of Girls, comes out, which Maria mentioned. People know, of course, Liz Gilbert for her nonfiction. Eat, Pray, Love and Big Magic are her two big sellers, but she's written these incredible novels. I got to read The Signature of All Things when I was in college, and it's a beautiful, beautiful book. She's a great fiction writer, too. So her novel, City of Girls, it's been out for a little bit of time, but her paperback tour started today, I think. So
Very
check that
cool.
out.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm really enjoying her audiobook. And so and it's really getting me back in audiobooks, which is cool because I did the Book of Joy on audio when I was recovering from surgery and I really enjoyed it. And I think I'm going to try to spend less time trying to control my parents' dynamic and the stressors that surround that and more time just kind of huddled in my office listening to some of these audiobooks because I need to let go of the control cord, as I learned today. And I've been kind of doing that. And it's been feeling better. Like the second I feel the energy in the kitchen of like, he's fed up because she's being this way and she's fed up. And I'm like, all right, I'm going out to meditate. Bye. And I'm not going to apologize for it. And I'm not going to feel guilty because my sanity is worth something too. So
Well, and Liz talks about her own parents too. And she's like, a couple years ago, she says this was a couple years ago. You know, she's had a life of spiritual enlightenment. She's like, I finally gave myself the permission slip to just let my parents be messy adults. Like, she's like, it took me so long to realize, like, just as I am a messy person, like, my parents aren't these like people on a pedestal who are perfect. And they also don't need me necessarily to step in and be their gatekeepers and their gods right now. They're just allowed to be messy people just like I am.
interesting. I wish I had known that before. I would have, you know, deep dived into that because I think that's where I've gone wrong in life is I go through bouts where I'm trying to control their happiness, their health, their everything. And when I take a step back, my life gets so much better in so many ways because their life goes round
Mhm.
and they survive and things get done. It doesn't always have to be me. And so I think I got to get myself back out of that hamster wheel and back into my own hamster wheel of, but the thing I was trying to, and I don't know if it came out right, but it's like, what I don't want to have is this narcissistic kind of side where it's like it's got to be about me and my happiness and my sanity and it's just me, me, me. I don't want that. And so that's where I have difficulty sometimes because I'm like, okay, how much of it should it be of me? How much
Mhm.
should it be me? And you know what I mean? Do you guys get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I totally do too. I think like the way I take it when I listen to people who really do a lot of work on themselves is like, and this is of course something I feel like, especially just joining your show, Maria, I'm learning so much about, but like we can't be a gift to other people unless we're first a gift to ourselves. Like I know with Laura, for example, I'm like my worst, if I'm coming off of a stressful day or I haven't taken care of my stuff or I'm beating myself up, I'm going to start beating her up too. Not literally, but I'm not going to be the sweet husband she married. And so like
mm-hmm.
I think that's like the me element I see is like we've got to give ourselves the gift of grace and affirmation if we want to give it to other people.
Yeah, I'm going to do this love letter. I hope Kevin was listening and he does that too. I think it's really, really helpful. So, anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation with Elizabeth Gilbert as much as I did. And I hope you're enjoying this, hour of sanity every day. It's Wednesday, so that means we'll be back tomorrow.
Hump day.
Is there somebody on deck tomorrow that we can share with everybody, Jeff?
Yes, there is. Well, we have a couple. We may have a surprise guest tomorrow. You're checking in today, but at some
Okay.
point we will have that guest. But if not, we have the district leader of the special ed program for San Marcos entire unified school district. I know there's a lot of moms who listen to your show, Maria, who are, for lack of a better word, feeling like they're drowning at home as they homeschool their kids. And she can speak right to them. She's a parent of two, and she's going to give us practical strategies for our bored kids, our frustrated kids, and even if you hate math and you have to teach math to your kids,
Oh
she's going to
boy.
help us through that tomorrow. So I'm really
Oh
looking
boy.
forward to it.
Okay. Yeah, I remember struggling with math and my parents couldn't help me and I'm like, "But you're Greek. You invented this shit." You should know.
The Pythagorean theorem, right?
Yeah, and so I had a tutor that we got, and I'll never forget. Her name was Maya. She was at Tufts University, and it helped me so much because I really wanted to be on honor roll or merit at least, and math was always my only issue. And I'm like, I am not getting a C plus. That is not going to happen. So, yeah, that'll be really cool to be able to give people tangible tips on how to deal with that, because I do see on social media a lot of moms suffering, and I hear from Kevin's friends as well. So, anywho, Stephen, do you have anything you want to say before we go?
No.
Hump day.
I'm just thinking about tigers with stingers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you guys, as always. If you would do us the kindness, rate, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend, share this on social media, let them know what we're doing here. And in the meantime, you can stay up to date with Elizabeth's endeavors on her social media account. You can follow her at Elizabeth_Gilbert_writer. You can follow me at Maria Menounos, at Jeffrey Crane Graham.
That's it.
Stephen Lemieux Photo. And remember, be nice people, make good choices, and be present.